My name's Jenny. I'm one of the trustees of Woodcraft Folk, and I actually went to Woodcraft Folk when I was a child, and I'm now a volunteer leader with our venturers who are 13 to 15 in my spare time. I'm going to be on the call all day. I'm going to hand over to Owen and Lauren in a second, but I'll be around to help with questions. And I'd just like to introduce, we've got on the call, we've got Lauren Penny, who's our communications manager, who many of you have been in email contact. And we've got Owen Cedric Dell, who's our head of membership and programs, and he's going to lead the session. But again, thank you so much for giving up your time. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you'll find this interesting and enjoyable.
Great, thank you, Jenny. I've got some slides which I was just going to run through as well to guide the session. As I said, I'm really happy to, if you want to put questions in the chat as we go along, if they occur to you, so they don't get lost. And either one of my colleagues will try and respond to it, or we'll take them at the end. Similarly, there'll be time to ask questions at the end as well. I'm aiming to keep this probably inside the hour, unless you've all got lots of really interesting questions, which would be fine. But the aim of tonight's session is to just give you a little bit of an introduction to Woodcraft at a kind of macro level. Think about the organisation as a UK-wide movement, and give you some basic information that will be helpful to you, whatever role you're trying to get involved in as a volunteer. So we will look a little bit at what Woodcraft Folk is all about, our origins, our history, and what makes us different from other organisations. Something about what our young members, our young people actually get from it. Think about volunteering with Woodcraft Folk and what that looks like, and to focus on the next steps for you as relatively new volunteers, and where you should be on that little volunteer journey, what you can expect and where you should be going for support and advice as you start to work with us in whatever function you've chosen. And as I said, there'll be a chance for questions at the end if that is something that you have got burning things you want to find out now. But similarly, Lauren or myself will be really happy to respond offline as well if you've got something that's a bit more long and detailed and involved and you don't want to discuss in front of everybody. Okay. I've got a couple of questions for you first. If you are watching on a laptop and you have a phone, point the phone at that little QR code and go to menti.com. Alternatively, go to menti.com on your browser and then put in the secret number 879718. Do that now and you should see a couple of questions, which it would be lovely to get your response to. And I'll jump over to those in just a second. Give you all a chance to tap in that code. And there we go. The code's at the top. Hopefully you can still see that. So I'd love to know what got you interested. Why are you here? There you go. Brilliant. So already got some answers appearing. I love it when it just like pops up in real time. It's great fun. So definitely some theme emerging there about the chance to get outdoors, about whoever said city dweller, I'm kind of going to guess that's about wanting to get out of the city a bit and connect with nature. Something about involving in local communities, getting involved with children and young people. Fun, yes, as long as we get it right, it should be fun. That's amazing. Just give a couple of minutes for people to catch up as well, if anyone's got anything else they want to add in. If it's too much to do the technology, just bang it in the chat if you would rather. That's absolutely fine as well. But I'd love to move on to the next question. And Oops. Great ethos. Good. We'll take that. That's fantastic. I will now move on if I can find the little button. There it is. Okay, so the next question is, what role will you be taking on as a volunteer when you get going? A number of options there. If it's something else, click something else, but it'd be just interesting to see. There you go. Already a massive mix. That's what I like to see. So someone's helping with the group. Someone's going to get involved at Woodcraft Centre. Someone's going to get involved in one of our camps. A couple of people don't know yet. That's absolutely fine. Hopefully you'll be a tiny little bit further down the line by the time we finish. Majority of people group leaders. That's, I guess, probably consistent with where most of our volunteers at least start to get involved with the organisation. But all of those roles were equally important. Oh, group and district admin, that's fantastic. We definitely need some people to help support the work that we do. That's really good to know. I've got now 8 answers and 9 responses. That's great. No, more than 9 responses, 11 responses. So lots of people thinking about wearing 2 hats, which again is very common in this organisation and something we love to see. Brilliant. I'm going to leave that there, but it's really good to get a sense of who we've got on the call and what the breadth of likely experiences are going to be, which is wonderful. It's everything we hoped in terms of that breadth of people's ideas and motivations for getting involved, but also the breadth of the roles that people are going to do. Hopefully whatever role that you're thinking about doing in the organisation, this will be relevant and useful for you to sort of set the foundation as you start out working with us. Just to take it right back to basics, we were founded in 1925, so we're coming up very, very close now to our centenary as an organisation. And, you know, founded between the wars, sharing some of our DNA from the scouting movement, the idea of getting young people doing structured activities and getting them out of the cities and all the rest of it. But in that era, in the aftermath of the First World War, our founders, who had themselves been involved in the scouting movement, they were utopian socialists, and they thought poorly of what they saw at the time in the scouting movement, which was this kind of militaristic approach, which they saw as effectively, you know, preparing young working class people to be the next generation of cannon fodder in the next big imperial war. And that kind of idealistic idea of trying to form something that was an alternative to that mainstream option made them an attractive prospect and you know, kindred spirits with the co-op movement and the trade union movement, and those have been our allies and supporters right along our journey, and also, you know, very involved with the peace movement and promoting, you know, alternatives to war, which again speaks very much to our founding from that kind of, you know, out of the ashes of the First World War, by people who had been largely not old enough to fight in the First World War, but had nonetheless seen the impacts of it on society as a whole. And we very quickly made links beyond the UK's borders, and became part of a global family of progressive youth organisations, initially in mostly Western Europe, but now increasingly right across the world. So we have sister sibling organisations from, you know, Germany, Austria, you know, Scandinavia, right down to you know, Chile, Latin America, and, you know, sub-Saharan Africa as well. So we're, you know, by being part of Woodcraft Folk, you're part of a UK-wide movement, but also part of something much, much bigger. You can see there little treasure from the archives of some of the first funding we received from the Royal Arsenal Co-op Society in Southeast London, just up the road from where Jenny is, granting us £5 to buy camping equipment from their store, which was, you know, the start of a long and fruitful relationship between the Woodcraft Folk and the co-op. You can see we grew very rapidly to become, you know, a mass participation movement, and, you know, in the years immediately before the Second World War broke out, we were running international camps, a very large one in Brighton in 1937, bringing together young people from across Europe to create this. They called it the Republic of Children, which is a wonderful concept. And at a time when tensions were rising across Europe, it was an incredible thing to be putting on an international camp, bringing young people from across Europe together, especially in hindsight, knowing what was to happen only a couple of years later. If this is the kind of thing that floats your boat, if you're interested in our, social and political roots, as well as the early days of the Woodcraft Folks history, there is a fantastic website that's been put together which contains this and much more kind of treasures from the archive. If that's your thing, do go and have a look and have a browse at some of the documents and artifacts that are in there, because it really is a window on not just our history but also our place in a kind of wider social and historical context. heritage.woodcraft.org.uk is the place to go to have a look at that. Today, we retain that identity that we were set up with of being a cooperative youth movement that is open to everybody. The way that manifests itself now is that we put children in the lead, and we support the young people who are part of our programs to change their world, whether that's through the weekly group nights that are the basis of everything we do, or whether that's through our camps and residentials that we'll do throughout the year. All the things that we're doing with young people, yes, they are fun when we do them, and they are engaging and seek to develop young people themselves in terms of their confidence and their knowledge and their understanding. But there's always a bigger purpose to build an engagement with big ideas, an understanding of the wider world, and that kind of broader internationalist vision, which was exactly what our founders set out to achieve. And sometimes we sum that up through a little strapline of fun activities exploring big ideas. Whether you're working directly with our groups, directly with our children and young people or not, that's the activity, the core activity that you're helping to enable. In terms of what that looks like, we have 200 groups around the country across 5 age ranges, ranging from wood chips, which are our under 6s, right up to DFs, which is our young adults. We have around 3,000 volunteers and supporters who enable that work to happen. And you've taken an important step to becoming, part of that group by coming here tonight. We support at any one time around 5,000 young people directly part of our groups, but through our funded activities and programs and outreach and all sorts of other things, we've touched the lives of many, many more. We have 5 outdoor centres and campsites around the country, well, around England, to be fair. We've got 2 here in the north, in West Yorkshire and in Derbyshire. We have a bunkhouse in Cudham in Kent. We have a railway station on the East Anglian coast, and our newest centre is Biblins, which is a large campsite in the Wye Valley. And through those, we touch even more people, because they're used not just by Woodcraft groups, but also by scouts and guides and county youth services and schools and Duke of Edinburgh Award expeditions and all sorts of things. So there are lots of people who are coming through those campsites and bunkhouses, sometimes just for a night or a couple of nights, sometimes for a much longer stay, but getting a sense of who we are as an organisation and fulfilling that ideal that we started with of getting young people out of towns and cities and to experience nature firsthand. Again, as we are an international movement and part of an international system, we regularly send our, to be fair, older young people to a series of international exchanges and other international projects. We've sent young adults and young volunteers this year already to Germany, to Chile, and further afield, and we've got numbers of our teenage young members going this summer to a camp in Finland. Our Finnish sister organisation is having an anniversary I don't know how many years, I've forgotten, maybe Jenny can remind me, but they're having an anniversary camp, and significant numbers of our young people are going to go and engage in that international camp in North Finland in high
I
summer.
think it's 90 years.
Is it 90?
Sure.
Thank you,
I
Lauren.
think so, but I can't remember.
Don't quote us.
No.
But yeah, and obviously a camp in high summer in northern Finland, there's going to be huge amounts of daylight and no one's going to get any sleep, and it's going to be great. And we also do activities ourselves on that scale. So last summer we had one of our regular international camps which saw 2,500 people, which, if you think about the numbers I mentioned earlier, is a significant chunk of the organisation's strength, together in a field in Kettering. We have an a venture camp for our 13 to 18-year-olds taking place in the Wye Valley this summer, which will bring around 300 people together. So we have, every couple of years, one of these large-scale activities going on within the UK as well, and many of those see people come from our sibling organisations as well. Underpinning all of that activity, all of that stuff, are our aims and principles. And somebody mentioned at the start that one of the things that attracted them was a strong ethos, and I think that's very true. We are an organisation where everything we do, or at least the way we do it, links back to our aims and principles. And I'm not going to go into these in great detail, but they are about education for social change is the kind of underpinning one. Everything we are doing is about helping and supporting and encouraging and facilitating young people to become active citizens, agents for change in their own community, and to rebuild a world as they get older, in the image of our aims and principles, and to make small improvements or big ones, to make a world that is more perfectly resembling the things that we stand up for and the things that we create when we come together and live as a community. A cooperative and sharing approach, one based on equality and inclusion where nobody's left out, one that promotes international friendship and respects children's rights, promotes a world at peace and specifically alternatives to war, and one that promotes what we call one world, effectively responsible use of the world's resources. So that's both about environmental concern, but it's also about a level of international justice and living responsibly and treading lightly on the world. So every activity that you see us engage in one way or another should have one of those threads running through it. Sometimes very tangentially, and sometimes it'll be much more front and center. But those are the activity and the ideas and ethos that will underpin much of what you'll see. We were 10 years out on the Finnish organisation. Anyway, so how do you get involved as a volunteer? Well, you might be doing any one of a number of things. You might be supporting our young people to explore their world, to find out more about the world that they live in, to discuss the issues that matter to them, or to create things, to express their creative talents. And these are sort of broad span of things that you'll find us doing on a standard group night activity, when we're in a meeting in church halls or school buildings or whatever up and down the country. It all has an impact on the young people, but we're really fortunate to have had some research which a few years ago really helped us demonstrate the value of coming to Woodcraft Folk for our young members. Lots of them agree, very, very strongly that they make new friends through our organisation, which at a time when young people's social connections and by extension their mental health has been damaged by lockdown and isolation and all of those things, is massively important. We create a supportive environment in which they can make new connections and, as people on this call will testify, connections and friendships that will sustain long into adulthood. 3/4 of people we surveyed strongly agreed that the experiences were going to be benefiting them in their future life as adults. 3/4 agreed that they develop new skills. And again, going back to young people's kind of mental health and confidence, 2/3 strongly agree that being part of our organisation helps them feel more confident. So whether you're working directly with young people every week, or whether you're having a much more occasional contact, or just working somewhere in the background to make it all happen, don't lose sight of the idea that we're developing the opportunity for young people to develop these things for themselves, which will benefit them for many years to come. So you've all come forward and you've expressed interest in doing this really radical thing of giving up your time to take responsibility for other people's children, or to support the other people who are doing that. Without our volunteers, as Jenny said at the start of the session, we are nothing. We have been driven by volunteers' input and talents and skills for nearly 100 years, and it's no different now to what it was in 1925. We still thrive on volunteers who give up their time to do things for other people, which is increasingly feeling like a radical and almost transgressive act sometimes. As Woodcraft Folk, we have a very small staff team in comparison to our reach, because so much of the work is done by volunteers. There is, as I've said earlier, a wide range of roles that you can get involved with, and don't feel confined to just doing one thing. Lots of people get involved to do one thing and then decide to get a bit more involved or take on another role or do another thing from time to time. That's brilliant. That's what we're all about. By volunteering, there's an opportunity to build and share our own skills and knowledge. So you'll find yourselves doing things that you never thought you were possibly, capable of doing. Cooking meals for 150 people. Second nature to lots of Woodcraft volunteers. By coming together and having teams of people volunteering together, we get to share the load, which is very true to our kind of cooperative identity and spirit. It's an opportunity to get active, get involved in a community. Maybe you've just moved to a new area or something, to make new connections with like-minded people who want to see the same changes in society that you do, but also to have fun. And if you're not enjoying it, then we're doing something wrong, and it should be an enjoyable experience for you. And lots of our groups and districts will put lots of effort into making sure that the social side of volunteering is also recognised, because lots of us have made very strong friendships and connections with the people that we volunteer alongside. So I hope that's something that will happen for many of you as well. To look in detail at some of the roles that you might be performing. So if you express interest in volunteering at our centres and campsites, what might you be doing? Well, there's maintenance tasks that are always needing to be done. There's often we have what we call working weekends, where 10 or 20 volunteers will come and blitz tasks and jobs that need to be done. Some of our centres thrive on volunteers coming to Warden to look after the groups who are there at the weekends, and have a little bit of a break away from the city as well. You might get involved supporting directly with a visiting group, so planning and delivering activities or helping cook and cater, and also straying into Lauren's area here, supporting our centres to raise the word and do their publicity and comms, because they're hidden gems, they really are, and we fill them quite a lot with our groups, but there's always vacancies for them to take on more school groups or other youth groups, and we really want to get the word out about this fantastic resource that we have stewardship of. You might get involved with one of our camps or events. I think somebody said that they were coming on board earlier for specifically to do an event at a camp. Depending on the size and scale, there's always advanced planning and project management to be done. There are people who volunteer to look after food and logistics and what we call site services, which is basically loos and water and boring things like that we can't do without. Again, publicity and comms for those, which can be a very involved task. At our last international camp, we had half an hour of live broadcast TV being done every day. We had a radio station broadcasting during daytime. At previous camps, we've had print newspapers being done and delivered around the site, so it can be a very involved task. We can have volunteers who are specifically there to deliver workshops and other activities for our young people, and increasingly, particularly when we have these long summer camps that are quite intense experiences for volunteers. We're also now looking for volunteers to support our volunteers and really focusing on how we put things in to support our volunteers. So our last big camp, there was basically a volunteer chill out space with smooth jazz and nice coffee, which was again run by volunteers, to just kind of take the load off and enable people to have a few moments to themselves. If, as the majority of our volunteers do, you're volunteering directly with our groups and districts, there might be a role for you in actually being there on the evening to support or lead activities and sessions for the young people. You might be helping to get the word out about the organisation and promote it to new volunteers or new young members. You might be delivering training or support to our existing volunteers, or helping with one of those massively important back office kind of tasks of admin, or doing things with spreadsheets, or worrying about the finances, or being a treasurer, or getting funds in and writing bids to enable us to do more and reach out further at a local level. So that's a little flavour of some of the things you'll be doing as a group, but increasingly we're also looking to have a team of volunteers who are working alongside some of our staff and our nationally our UK-wide structures. So Lauren is currently looking for somebody to help support and develop some new ideas and some new content for our website. We have a couple of very dedicated volunteers who work on finance for us, and support the network of treasurers who keep the bank accounts ticking over around the place. We have opportunities for designers and illustrators and art workers to create some of the things like our promotional t-shirts and resources and flyers and things like that. We've also got volunteers who are involved in creating some of the educational resources that we are encouraging our groups to use in their activities. And like Jenny, we have all of our trustees as a charity are voluntary, and there are a number of other committees and standing bodies around the organisation, whether that's focusing on supporting the work of one of our centres, or whether that's looking at a particular subject matter. So we've currently got a committee that supports us to look to improve our safeguarding arrangements. We've got committees that are looking at decarbonising our activities and ensuring everything we do is environmentally sustainable. We've got committees of members with specialist interests looking at equality and inclusion and so on. So there's lots of opportunities if you've particularly got an interest or a subject matter expertise to come and be part of one of these bodies or think tanks or task and finish groups. Some people do that as their contribution, and some people do that in addition to working in one of our groups and districts, but really helping to kind of put that support and structure and guidance in place for everybody who's running a group. Okay. At the moment, you are, I hope, somewhere on this kind of journey towards being a fully fledged volunteer with the organisation. At some point, and this is not a kind of linear path, you might be doing these things in different orders, but between when you first heard of us and when you're let go fully on your own, we hope that these things will be happening. You'll have some kind of induction to the local group or the centre or the project or the area of our central operations that you'll be supporting. As part of that, agree what your role actually is. You'll have a chance to try it out and see if it's for you. We'll ask you to register on our group database as a volunteer, and depending on your role, there'll be some element of screening to make sure that we're putting the right sort of people in our organisation. Initially, that would be a couple of references, but if you're working directly with children and young people, we will ask you in all likelihood to do a DBS or a PVG check. So a level of background screening there as well. That will depend, and the nature of that will depend on what role you've come forward to do. And as part of your induction, that should be explained to you. There will be a few kind of key documents, like things like risk assessments and so on, and policies that you need to read and agree to. Our code of conduct talks about how we expect all volunteers to work and work together. I would hope there will be a conversation about what training you need to thrive and succeed in your role, but also to connect you into local information and support. There are some more formal ways that might be done by inviting you to come to meetings and AGMs and things like that, but very often there's lots of informal support. So you might have a buddy, you might be joined to a volunteers WhatsApp group so that you can ask questions and you can find out what's going on and what the plans are. Or it might just be as simple as putting you on a Google group or adding you to a mailing list, so you're getting all the information about the upcoming information. So if those things haven't started to happen for you, then they should do very soon. And if you don't, if you find there's one of those that you think you've not heard anything about in a couple of weeks, couple of months time, then by all means get in touch with us, and we'll try and put you back on the right track. But those are the sorts of things that you can expect to be happening in the coming weeks. I mentioned earlier our safeguarding arrangements. Obviously, as an organisation working with children and young people, keeping our children and young people safe in our activities has to be front and centre. There's lots of different ways that we do that. And some of them are popping up on the screen just now. So we will train our volunteers in their safeguarding responsibility. We will have informed consent and emergency contact details for our children and so on. The precise ones that relate to you will depend on the role that you're doing. But there are a few things that we would want everybody to always be alive to. Effectively, if at any point in your engagement with the organisation, whether you're working directly with children and young people or not, an important part of keeping Woodcraft Folk safe is that we work together to hold each other to account for providing a safe environment for our children and young people. And as such, we will ask you always to share any concerns that you have, whether that's about an individual child or children who might be at risk within their home, either because of something you've seen or something a child has said. If you see another adult behaving inappropriately, or if you see inappropriate or concerning behavior from a child, or if you see volunteers not doing what they're supposed to be doing, if you see the rules and guidance that you've been told about not being followed, that's worth sharing. And the person to share that with in most cases will be your local safeguarding lead. So you should, as part of your induction, find out who is the person who you should go to locally with any concerns. If you, for some reason, can't go to that person or don't want to go to that person, then you can always come directly to our safeguarding team based nationally. That's led by myself, and my colleague Felix and Leanne are also on the other end of that email. So it will always reach one of us if you have any concerns. Safeguarding@woodcraft.org.uk is the best way to raise those. For your more routine queries, particularly as you come through that membership journey, the membership@woodcraft.org.uk is the way to resolve those, which will connect to my colleague Rosie, who's our membership administrator, who will be there to sort any issues we've got with your DBS process or anything like that, or help you to get to grips with admin or systems or volunteer training. So those are the, as you become more involved in the organisation, those are the two key contacts I'd like you to etch on your memory. You can also at any point just ring the phone number that's on the website, and you'll get a series of options. I think you press number 4 to talk to me, number 1 to talk to somebody about your membership, and so on. But there's also lots of information on the website which will help you to kind of navigate your way through, which I'm sure many of you have already had a look at. That was all I had. That was a real gallop, but I'm very happy to respond to any questions or comments that people have got now, or if either